tonight I'm making creamy Parmesan Polenta as an alternative to rice or mashed potatoes to have with our steak and green beans. So first off, let me turn y'all around so you can see what we're doing. I have 4 cups of chicken broth, so just regular reduced sodium chicken broth. And I'm going to add this to our pot right here on the stove. Hey, Aunt Margaret. Hi, Mary Ellen. I hope y'all are having a good weekend. All right. So we've got our 4 cups of chicken broth in here, and I'm going to turn this on to high. We want to bring it to a boil. There we go. Ooh. Hold up. Our flame's doing some weird things. I cleaned the stovetop a little while ago, and it must be a little off kilter because we don't want that, do we? Let's see. It seems like it's on there fine. Okay, let's try again. We don't want a weird flame while we're cooking, do we? All right. Huh. As y'all can see, that's... I need to investigate that later. Let's switch eyes. Sometimes things like that happen. All right. Oh, sorry about that noise. That was like nails on a chalkboard. Yuck. All right. Well, that one's doing it too. That's really weird. That's doing like on the opposite side. Okay, like now I'm really curious what's going on with my stove. Okay, aha. That one's doing just fine. So let's do we'll use the back burner, even though it's not quite as big. So let's figure out what's going on with the others. Okay, I'm just gonna let that sit there, and we're gonna bring that to a boil. All right. And I have right here 2 cloves of chopped garlic or minced that I'm just going to add to our pan here. Let's grate that off. So usually if it's just 1 or 2 cloves, which are the little pieces, not the whole head of garlic, I just chop them up. If it's more than that, I might use my mini food processor. That makes short work of it. Okay, so we're going to bring this to a boil. Okay, so I don't know if your stove is similar to mine or not, or if yours is a little bit different package, but if you've ever had that happen, then let me know. I don't know what's going on with my eyes. Let's see. Aha! Okay. This one is all set and working, so we're going to turn that one back on. So we got the fire all around now, so probably it was just a little off where the tops or whatever the covers are after I scrubbed the stove down earlier. Okay, it'll heat up faster on the big eye than the little eyes. And one of my friends posted recently that we all that people tend to have a favorite burner to cook off of. I feel like I have 2 favorite burners. I every now and then use the back ones that are smaller. I almost always use the front ones. My favorite is probably the bottom left, but bottom right is my second favorite. And I tend to have certain things I like to cook on one versus the other. I don't know about y'all. Like I always boil water and cook my pasta on the bottom left, but I usually do like rice and things like that on the bottom right. So anything that in this pot I usually do on the right instead of the left, and then my slightly bigger pot goes on the left. Yeah, this smaller pot usually goes on the right and my bigger pot's on the left. I don't know why, just a little preference. So maybe because it's easy to stir with my right hand and hold on to the handle with my left or something like that. Who knows? If y'all have a favorite burner, I'd be interested to know. Just kind of curious. Okay. So we're going to bring that to a boil. So tonight we're making polenta. So that's kind of, I feel like as Southerners, we're naturally predisposed to like polenta because so many people love grits. I know my husband's a big fan of shrimp and grits especially. Polenta is slightly different. Polenta is like an Italian version of grits. Polenta is made with yellow cornmeal versus white cornmeal, so a little bit of a difference. It's usually a slightly thicker coarser texture and it's a little bit chewier. Grits are usually a little bit finer and smoother. And I feel like because of the way the cornmeal's ground too, there's a little bit more starchiness released, I almost feel like, with grits, that, not a gumminess, I want to say, but it just kind of gives a little bit more of that starchy kind of body to it. You're going to get a little bit coarser, and chewier texture with the polenta. And the Parmesan in this will give it a nice saltiness and nuttiness. Alright, so we are getting that up to a boil, not quite there. And so to go with this, I'm doing some fresh green beans. I snapped a whole bunch of beans and boiled them for a few hours on the stove earlier in the week. And there's a little bit left over, so we'll have some nice fresh green beans with this. And then I'm also marinating some steak over here and some Italian red wine. And then instead of, I really like doing rosemary or thyme as herbs on steak if I don't just do salt and pepper. But I'm going to do Italian seasoning this time to kind of carry over the Italian theme to the meal. We're using Italian wine, Italian herbs, Italian creamy Parmesan polenta. So that'll be a nice little twist to an overall Southern meal. So in addition to the rosemary and thyme, which I like to use on steak, you also get some marjoram and sage and basil in the Italian seasoning. So it'll give a little bit of a twist to it. Now we're getting there. It's getting pretty hot. So if you just joined us, I have 4 cups of reduced sodium chicken broth in here and a couple cloves of minced garlic. Remember, the cloves are like the toes. I think I've mentioned it before, but once in college, Dane was trying to cook me a really nice chicken meal, and instead of cloves of garlic, he used like 2 or 3 heads of garlic, and the garlic flavor was pretty overwhelming. Very sweet of him to try it, though. It was good, but a bit intense, so unless you're doing like a 40 cloves of garlic recipe, you probably want to steer clear of that. This is a little bit, I usually saute garlic for about a minute in olive oil if I'm using it in a dish, but here I'm just adding it straight to the chicken broth and letting it come to a boil. So that's saves a step, a little bit simpler and easier. Okay, there's nothing like watching water to boil, right? Oh, we're getting there. You can see it around the edges. Aha. Okay, so that's coming to a boil. And over here, so we have our whole grain cornmeal. It's medium ground, and this is yellow cornmeal, as you can see. We want to do yellow for the polenta instead of white cornmeal like you would use for grits. And I already measured a cup of cornmeal, and I have a little bit of salt and pepper here. Let's just say maybe a tablespoon of ground salt and maybe a teaspoon of pepper, just kind of estimating. You can salt and pepper to taste. I also have 3 tablespoons of mascarpone cheese and 1 tablespoon of half and half. I was going to use 4 tablespoons of creme fraiche in this recipe, but when we were at Publix earlier today, they didn't have any creme fraiche. Apparently, they used to keep it in stock, but they don't have it in they're not ordering it right now. I think they'd special ordered it for someone. If you're in Birmingham, Trader Joe's has creme fraiche. I've used it before. I know in potatoes. I can't remember if I used it in anything else or not, but it's really good for nice and creamy mashed potatoes. But we weren't out near Trader Joe's today, and so I'm subbing the creme fraiche for some mascarpone and some half and half because mascarpone is a little bit thicker than creme fraiche is. Another good substitute would be sour cream, which a lot of people have on hand. I like using sour cream in pound cakes sometimes, but overall for cooking, I feel like sour cream is a little bit tangier than I would prefer to use in cooking. Creme fraiche is similar to sour cream, just not quite as tangy. So that's why I decided to use the milder taste of the mascarpone cheese. And I also have about a cup of grated Parmesan cheese. I measured it earlier, and it is a cup. It's about halfway full. This is an 8-ounce container, so I'm guessing about 4 ounces grated Parmesan, about a cup of Parmesan, And then I have a couple of tablespoons of unsalted butter that I went ahead and diced up. All right, so we have a nice boil here. Okay, we are going to bring this down to a simmer and bring it down to low. And we're going to gradually add our cornmeal and whisk it in. I'm going to add some and whisk it since I'm kind of doing this one-handed. We want to make sure everything's whisked really well. I might bump that up a little bit off low, maybe to about 4. I want this to be nice and smooth. I'll go ahead and add a little bit more. So we had a nice date night on Friday. We've been dating for, we started dating 12 years ago on Friday. Dane we used to really love to go swing dancing when we were in college. So Dane found a band that plays a little bit north of Birmingham every 4th Friday, and we went out to dinner beforehand. And so, basically the band is there, but the whole point is that it's a dancing group that meets every 4th Friday for dancing, and they just happen to have a live band, which is fun. We went to Bellini's, which was really delicious, and we each had a couple of different pasta dishes that were really good. But I saw polenta on the menu a few times. I think there was some Parmesan polenta on there, and some polenta with saffron. But it sounded really good, and was making me want to try to make some polenta at home this weekend. Because you can only order so many things off the menu. When everything sounds good, you've got to pick one, right? So sometimes that's a good place to get ideas. See something that looks delicious on a menu and then come back and make it at home. All right, smelling good so far. It's pretty whisked together. I'll add some more. So I'm kind of just doing some wrist action on this so I don't make a huge mess and spilled the polenta and chicken broth all over the stove that I just cleaned tonight. All right, looking good. It's getting thicker. Let's turn that up to medium. Okay, so that's perfect. Okay, add a little bit more. Definitely start to feel this getting thicker. Okay, trying to get the lumps out. So obviously James isn't going to eat this because of the cheese in it and the Parmesan and the mascarpone and the half and half I'm using and the butter. Obviously this is not James friendly, but polenta or grits usually don't have a ton of flavor in and of themselves, so you get the flavor from whatever you add to it. All right, but we have some a little bit of leftover brown rice that's dairy-free that he can have, so not too worried about that. Then I'm making the steak dairy-free as well, and obviously the green beans are. All right, so I'm going to switch over to a wooden spoon. I'm going to turn this down. There we go. Grab my wooden spoon. Okay, so I have this on low right now. And I'm also going to add my salt and pepper that I showed y'all a minute ago. You can add more or less to taste. All right. Looking good. Okay. Now we are going to let this simmer, and I'm going to stir it pretty much constantly for about 5 to 10 minutes until it thickens up. So I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, so about 8:25 to 8:30. This will be nice and done. Let's kind of watch it. Some dishes aren't super hard really, but they do require some watching, and this is one of them. And make sure you're scraping the bottom too. And you can see, even though I've whisked it up really nice, there's like a coarse texture to it, which is a lot different than grits, which are a lot smoother. And a little bit finer texture in the grits. I kind of think polenta tends to have a little bit more flavor to it, though, than grits do. Almost like a cornbread, but in between a cornbread and a rice or a risotto dish. I kind of think of polenta as risotto made with, yeah. That's a really good, yeah, I think, a description. A mixture between cornbread and risotto. And we are a huge fan of risotto, that nice creamy texture you can get with the arborio rice. And you can add a lot of different flavors to that too. This will make a nice change up from having potatoes or rice with our steak and veggies. Yeah, it's getting thicker, but still kind of runny, so we're gonna let this keep going. Bumped it up just a little bit, just slightly over low. Nice simmer going on. Okay. I made some fresh marinara sauce yesterday with some I'm blanking. What type of tomatoes did I use? Roma tomatoes. I used Roma tomatoes to make the sauce last night. It was nice and fresh. And we tried out some new pasta I'd seen at the store. It was home style pasta. It was in the dried section. It wasn't in the fresh refrigerated section, which is where sometimes I'll pick up some pasta, because that's as close as I feel like the refrigerated section is as close as you can get to fresh pasta without spending all the time to make it yourself. And even though I love making fresh pasta and it's hard to beat that, sometimes you just don't have time. That's a lot of work. But the home style pasta was egg based and cooks up a little bit quicker than regular dried pasta does, and it was pretty good. We did the home style fettuccine. That was the egg based pasta, and I would say it's not quite as good as the refrigerated pasta, but it was fairly close. It was a good mix up from just regular dried pasta to something new to try out. The homemade sauce just kicks it up another notch. I feel like no matter what kind of pasta you're making, using the homemade sauce just makes it so much better. And you really don't need that many ingredients for it either. I used just tomatoes. I used a little bit of olive oil, garlic. I used some Italian seasoning, but nothing crazy. So if you have a Dutch oven and an immersion blender or a food processor, you're all set. And you can make it as chunky or smooth as you like at home, which is kind of nice too. All right, so it's getting thicker. Yay. It still needs a bit more though. So a lot of y'all, especially those that live around Birmingham, probably know that I'm doing a little bit of catering now too, in addition to these fun cooking videos I get to do with y'all every week. But I've been kind of surprised recently when talking to people that just didn't know that I'd been doing that at all, even people that I'm friends with and live close by. So in case you didn't know and you like the cooking videos and you live nearby, I do cater once a week, basically just fresh cooked dinner right to your doorstep. If you live in Ross Bridge, I deliver. I'll even deliver out to McGill Crossings, Chase and Liz. But that's really as far as I can reasonably go. But if you live anywhere else local, feel free to pick up. And if that's something you're interested in and don't know that I'm doing it yet, just let me know and I'll add you to my group where I post the menus every week. That's been a lot of fun. I've been doing it since August, and I feel like the most rewarding thing is I feel like cooking is, a way to, show love for people and to really nourish people's bodies and souls. But when, someone tells me that, I'm always getting home from work late, and we actually sat down as a family today to eat dinner because it was here when we got home and I didn't have to cook, or a single mom tells you what a lifesaver it's been because it, saves time where she's, getting home and can spend with her kids and, dinner's there. Or parents that are like, oh, my toddler loved their food and they actually ate seconds. And that just makes me so happy to be able to help people out like that, like I do for my own family. All right, it's getting thicker. So not too exciting at this point, but sometimes a little patience is all it takes to make something really yummy. And we don't want it to burn or stick, so that's why the stirring is so important. Because if you can, I don't know if y'all can see, but if I don't stir it, I can tell it's already getting kind of thick around the corners or the edges of the pot especially. And that would be more likely to burn or really stick if I wasn't constantly stirring. So move that over a little bit. There we go. Maybe just a little bit more. I think this would also be good if to make this Parmesan Polenta and then do something like barbecue shrimp on top of it. That would be a great twist on classic shrimp and grits. I bet my husband would love that. Might be something to do another time. Definitely starting to stick to the edges now. It's getting thicker. So do I have a lot of grits fans that are watching? I know my husband really loves grits. I'm not the hugest fan, but for some reason I like polenta a little bit better than grits. Kind of curious to know who likes one versus the other, or if you like both. And it's kind of fun to know, too, that even people on the other side of the world as us eat similar things. So even if it's not exactly the same, there's a lot that connects us through food. All right, so it's been about 8 minutes so far. It's getting nice and thick. It's a pretty good texture. I might let this go another minute. This is going to get thicker too when we add in the cheese and everything. So, all right, it's been about 9 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and cut off the heat. I think that's getting thick enough. You can kind of do the consistency to your taste as well. All right, so I'm going to add the mascarpone cheese and the half and half. So I'm doing 3 tablespoons of their mascarpone cheese and 1 tablespoon of half and half, instead of using 4 tablespoons of the creme fraiche because I wasn't able to find it at the store today. All right, so I'm going to stir that in. Nice. You can see it getting creamier. This is hot enough that it's melting in nicely even without the heat under it. Yum. Smelling really good. Okay. And I'm going to add in the butter next. So we have a couple tablespoons of diced butter here. So dicing it helps it melt more evenly and quickly. More surface area for the heat to get to. All right, looks good. Oh, it's smelling really good already. Okay, now I'm going to add our cup of grated Parmesan cheese. And this will really thicken it up. So I wasn't worried about it being perfectly thick when I took it off the heat because I knew the cheese would help do the trick. I love Parmesan. It's one of my favorite cheeses. There's a nice nuttiness and saltiness to it. All right, it's looking pretty good there. All right, so we're all set here. This is looking and smelling delicious. I'm just going to pop our steaks on the grill since it's been marinating for a while and put some salt and pepper and some Italian herbs on it. And then plate that up with our green beans and our creamy Parmesan polenta. So I hope y'all enjoy watching this recipe and got a few great ideas. Y'all have a great evening. Talk to you soon.